Hello everyone, my name is Khurram Mahmood Bhatti and I am a Technical Success Manager at Datamsky IT Services. I am also Vice President Trainings at Code Movement, Pakistan. I have over 15 years of experience in the IT industry. Following are my contact details. If you want to contact me, you can shoot me an email or you can contact me on my Skype. I will be happy to answer your queries. So today we will be talking about Git fundamentals, its concepts, and its architecture. So the main topics of this presentation will be the version control, what version control is, why we use version control system, and we will talk about the difference between GitHub and Git, and last but not the least we will talk about Git features. So first of all, we will talk about the version control, what version control is. So version control is a system that records changes to a file or set of files over time so that you can recall specific versions later. If you are a graphic or web designer and want to keep every version of an image or layout, which you would most certainly want to, a version control system is a very wise thing to use. It allows you to revert selected files back to a previous state, revert the entire project back to a previous state, compare changes over time, see who last modified something that might be causing a problem, who introduced an issue and when, and more. Using a version control system also generally means that if you screw things up or lose files, you can easily recover. Okay, so on a very abstract level, we will explain version control by using a picture which shows a transition of a project from one state to the other during changes. On the top, we have the timeline in which these changes happen, and we also have project files such as index.html and contactus.html. Below project, we have the version control system which shows how it works. In the start, we have one file with the name index.html and we add a header in it since it is a modification. So Git keep it as a modified file and show this change with orange color. On the next change, we add another file in the application with the name contactus.html. Since it is an addition, therefore Git will mark as created and shows the change with green color. Similarly, we make some changes in the contactus.html, which is a modification in the file. I hope you can understand the basic concept of version control system, that how it works. So now we will talk about why we use a version control system. So the first one is the keep track of changes. It helps us in keeping track of all the changes that we made in the project. With version control, you can track changes made to files over time. This allows you to see who made what changes, when and why. You can also revert to a previous version of a file if you need to undo changes. Git keeps track of changes using a data structure called a directed acyclic graph, which is also called DAG, of commits. A commit is a snapshot of the project's file at a specific point in time, along with metadata about file changes made, such as the author's name, email, and timestamp. Remember that each file in your working directory can be in one of two states: tracked or untracked. Tracked files are files that were in the last snapshot as well as any newly staged files. They can be unmodified, modified, or staged. In short, tracked files are files that Git knows about. Untracked files are everything else. Any files in your working directory that were not in your last snapshot and are not in your staging area. When you first clone a repository, all of your files will be tracked and unmodified because Git just checked them and you haven't edited anything. As you edit files, Git sees them as modified because you have changed them since your last commit. As you work, you selectively stage these modified files and then commit all those staged changes, and this cycle repeats. So the second thing that we will be discussing is the collaboration. When multiple people work on the same project, version control helps ensure that everything is working on the most up-to-date version of the files. It also allows team members to merge their changes together without conflicts. Source versioning tools are essential for effective collaboration on software projects. Here are some tips for collaborating effectively using source versioning tools. The first one is to choose the right tool. There are several source versioning tools available such as Git, Subversion, Mercurial, etc. Each tool has its own strengths and weaknesses, so choose the one that best fits your team's needs. Second one is to establish a clear workflow. It's important to establish a clear workflow for how changes will be made, reviewed, and merged into the main branch. This will help avoid conflicts and ensure that everyone is on the same page. Branching is very important in version control system. Branching allows you to work on a copy of the code base without affecting the main branch. This can be useful and helpful when working on new features or fixing bugs. Make sure to communicate which branches are being used for what purpose and when they should be merged back into the main branch. Always use pull requests. Pull requests are a great way to review and discuss changes before they are merged into the main branch. They allow team members to provide feedback and suggest improvements and catch errors before they make it into the main branch. Okay, so now we will talk about the communication, which is very much important in collaboration. Communication is key when collaborating on software projects. Make sure to regularly communicate with your team members about what you are working on and any issues you are facing and any changes you have made. Always use code review tools. Code review tools can automate the process of reviewing code changes and can provide feedback on coding standards, security issues, and best practices. This can help ensure that code changes are high quality and consistent with the rest of the code base. Overall, effective collaboration with source versioning tools requires clear communication, a well-defined workflow, and a willingness to give and receive feedback. By following these tips, your team can work together more efficiently and produce higher quality software. Now, we will talk about how can we maintain the code quality. By tracking changes and keeping a history of the code, version control makes it easier to identify bugs or issues and track down the cause of problems. Source versioning tools are not only helpful for collaboration, but they can also be used to maintain code quality. Here are some ways to maintain code quality using source versioning tools. First one are the code reviews. Code reviews are an essential tool for maintaining code quality. When team members submit changes, others should review them to ensure that the code is of high quality and meets coding standards. Code reviews can be done through pull requests and code review tools. Pre-commit hooks are scripts that run before a commit is made. They can be used to enforce coding standards, check for security vulnerabilities, and perform other checks to ensure that the code is of high quality. By using code linters, which are tools that analyze code for syntax errors, coding standards, violations, and other issues, they can be integrated into the source versioning tool to automatically check code as it is committed. Use automated testing. Automated testing can help ensure that code changes do not introduce new bugs or regressions. Tests should be run before code is committed, and the results should be reviewed before the code is merged into the main branch. Always use code analysis tools. Code analysis tools can be used to analyze code for performance issues, security vulnerabilities, and other issues. These tools can be integrated into the source versioning tool to automatically check code as it is committed. By using these techniques, you can ensure that code changes are of high quality and meet coding standards. This will help reduce bugs, improve maintainability, and make it easier to new team members to understand and work with the code base. Alright, now we will talk about experiment without risk. With version control, you can create new branches to experiment with changes without affecting the main code base. This allows you to try out new features or ideas without the risk of breaking the working code. Source versioning tool can be used to experiment without risking the stability of the code base. Here are some ways to experiment using source versioning tools. The first one is to use feature branches. Feature branches are branches that are used to develop new features or experiment with new ideas. They allow developers to work on a separate branch without affecting the main branch. Once the feature is complete, it can be merged back into the main branch. We should also use branches for testing. Branches can also be used for testing. For example, you can create a branch to test a new library or framework before integrating it into the main branch. This allows you to test the new code without risking the stability of the code base. Tags can be used to mark specific versions of the code base. This can be useful when experimenting with new features or ideas. You can create a tag before making major changes so that you can easily revert back to the previous version if needed. Staging environment is very important in development work. A staging environment is a separate environment where changes can be tested before they are deployed to production. By using a staging environment, you can experiment with new ideas without risking the stability of the production environment. Rollback functionality is very much important in version control system because source versioning tools can have a rollback functionality that allows you to revert back to the previous version of the code base. This can be useful when experimenting with new ideas or features. If something goes wrong, you can quickly revert back to the previous version. By using these techniques, you can experiment with new ideas and features without risking the stability of the code base. This can help you innovate faster and improve the quality of your code. Alright, how can we ensure the project continuity? So in this slide, we will be talking about the project continuity in detail. Version control helps ensure that a project can continue even if team members leave or are unavailable. The project history and files are stored in a central repository that can be accessed by other team members. Source versioning tools can help ensure project continuity by providing a complete history of changes made to the code base. Here are some ways to ensure project continuity using source versioning tools. Commit messages should be descriptive and provide a clear summary of the changes made. This will make it easier for future developers to understand why changes were made and how they fit into the overall project. Version numbers. Version numbers can be used to track major releases and changes to the codebase. This makes it easier to understand when major changes were made and what features were added. Branches plays a vital role to ensure project continuity. Branches can be used to work on different features or ideas without affecting the stability of the main branch. This can help ensure that the project remains stable while changes are being made. As we discussed tags before, so tags are also important for project continuity. Tags can be used to mark specific versions of the code base. This makes it easier to track changes over time and ensure that older versions of the code base can be easily accessed if needed. Backups. Source versioning tools provide a backup of the code base which can be used to restore the project in case of a disaster or data loss. It's important to ensure that backups are created regularly and are stored in a secure location. By using these techniques, you can ensure project continuity and make it easier for future developers to understand and work with the code base. This can help ensure that the project remains stable and continues to evolve over time. Alright, we will talk about project analysis. Source versioning tools can be used for project analysis to gain insights into how a project is evolving over time. Here are some ways to perform project analysis using source versioning tools. The first one is the code churn analysis. Code churn analysis involves tracking how often code is changed, who is making the changes, and what types of changes are being made. This can help identify areas of the code base that are being changed frequently and may require additional attention. Code review analysis involves reviewing the comments made during code reviews. This can help identify common issues or areas of concern that developers are discussing during the code review process. Release analysis involves tracking when releases are made, what changes are included in each release, and how the project has evolved over time. This can help identify trends in how the project is being developed and how it is evolving over time. Contributor analysis. Contributor analysis involves tracking who is contributing in the project and how their contributions are affecting the project. This can help identify top contributors and potential areas of the collaboration. Bug analysis is very important during any project analysis because bug analysis involves tracking the types of bugs that are being reported and how they are being fixed. This can help identify patterns in how bugs are being reported and fixed and can help prioritize bug fixes based on their impact on the project. By using the techniques, you can gain insights into how a project is evolving over time and identify areas that may require additional attention. This can help improve the quality of the project and ensure that it continues to evolve in a positive direction. Alright, so what is the difference between distributed and a centralized version control system? In this slide, we will talk about what these are and what are the advantages and disadvantages of the both systems. So version control system can be broadly categorized into two types: centralized and distributed. Here is a brief comparison of two. Centralized version control system is a single central server that stores the entire code base and manages all version control operations. Developers check out a copy of the code base from the central server, make changes locally, and then commit their changes back to the central server. Examples of centralized version control system include Subversion and Perforce. Now, what are the advantages of a central version control system? Central version control system provides a single source of truth for the entire code base, which can make it easier to manage changes and ensure that everyone is working on the latest version of the code. It can be easier to administer since there is only one central server. Along with the advantages, it also has disadvantages. Central version control system requires a constant network connection to access the central server, which can be a problem if developers are working offline or have a slow or unreliable internet connection. It can be more difficult to work with the branching and merging since all changes need to be made on the central server. Whereas, if we talk about distributed version control system, in a distributed version control system, every developer has their own local copy of the code base and can perform version control operation independently. Developers can commit changes to their local repository without requiring a connection to a central server. Examples of distributed version control system include Git, Mercurial, and Bazaar. Like centralized version control system, distributed version control systems also have advantages as well as disadvantages. Distributed version control system allows developers to work offline and make it easy to work with branching and merging. It provides a high degree of redundancy since each developer has a complete copy of the code base. Along with advantages, it also has some disadvantages. It can be more difficult to manage changes and ensure that everyone is working on the latest version of the code since there is no central server. It can be more complex to administer since there are multiple copies of the code base to manage. Overall, both centralized and distributed version control system have their advantages and disadvantages. The choice between them depends on the specific needs of the project and the development team. Alright, now in this slide we will discuss about the difference between Git and GitHub. There is a misconception that both are same, however both are totally different. Git and GitHub are two different things, but they are often used together. Here's a brief explanation of the difference between Git and GitHub. Git is a distributed version control system that allows developers to track changes made to their code base over time. It is a command line tool that is installed on a developer's computer and can be used to track changes made to code, create branches for testing new features, and merge changes made by multiple developers. However, GitHub is a web-based hosting service for Git repositories. It provides a centralized location for storing and sharing code with other developers. GitHub provides features such as pull requests, code reviews, and issues tracking to facilitate collaboration among developers. To summarize, Git is a version control system used to manage code changes locally on the developer's computer, while GitHub is a web-based hosting service that provides a centralized location for storing and sharing code repositories. Git can be used without GitHub, but GitHub relies on Git for version control. Alright, now there are some features which are very important for today's discussion. So Git is a powerful and flexible version control system that provides many features to help developers manage changes to their code base. Here are some of the key features of Git. First one, it is distributed. Git is a distributed version control system, which means that each developer has their own copy of the code base on their local machine. This makes it easy for developers to work offline and collaborate with others without requiring a centralized server. Git allows developers to create branches for testing new features or making changes to the code base without affecting the stability of the main branch. Changes made in a branch can be merged back into the main branch once they are complete. Git allows developers to commit changes to the code base, which creates a snapshot of the code at that point in the time. Each commit includes a message that describes the changes made. Also, Git allows developers to stage changes before committing them. This allows developers to review their changes and ensure that only the necessary changes are committed. This feature is very important in software development since you can revert your changes if something wrong happens. So Git allows developers to revert changes made to the code base. This can be useful if a mistake was made, if a change needs to be rolled back. Git also keeps version tracking. It keeps a complete history of changes made to the code base. This allows developers to review changes made over time and see who made them. Git is a great tool regarding collaboration, and collaboration is very much important when you work within a team. Git allows multiple developers to work on the same code base at the same time. It provides features such as pull requests and code reviews to facilitate collaboration and ensure that changes are thoroughly reviewed before they are merged into the main branch. Overall, Git provides many powerful features that made it an essential tool for managing changes to codebase and collaborating with other developers. Alright, now we will talk about what repository is and how many types of repositories are there. A repository in version control system is a central location where all the versions of a project's files and directories are stored. A version control system allows developers to track changes made to their code over time, collaborate with other developers, and manage multiple versions of their project. In a repository, each version of a file or directory is stored as a separate commit. These commits typically include a description of the changes made, who made the changes, and when the changes were made. This information is essential for tracking the progress of a project and identifying potential issues. There are two main types of version control systems, centralized and distributed. In a centralized system, all developers access the repository from a central server. In a distributed system, each developer has their own local copy of the repository, and changes can be synced with other copies of the repository as needed. Some popular version control systems include Git, SVN, and Mercurial. Alright, that's it for now. So if you have any question, you can send me your queries and I will be happy to answer those. Thanks again.